Sonny Dykes spoke with RJ Young from Fox Sports. What can we take away from that interview? We'll break that down next here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. So also subscribe on all the different platforms. Thank you for listening or tuning into the show, however it is you do. Sonny Dykes spoke with RJ Young from Fox Sports. RJ does a good college football podcast a couple times a week. And Sonny hasn't spoken a lot this offseason, kind of a byproduct of the season they had. Obviously, after they went to the national title game, there were a lot of media requests, a lot of opportunities to talk about his team. Not so much talk this year. Could be a good thing, right, as those guys prepare for the offseason and trying to get better. Kind of, all right, let's lock the doors. Let's be in here together. Let's work together to try to get better. But I did think there were some interesting things that he said. He started off talking about the letdown that was last year and what led to that. He said, look, I mean, a big part of it was we lost a lot of good players, right? And we can go down the list. Max Duggan's gone. Quentin Johnson's gone. Steve Avila moves on. Also lost some significant pieces from that defense. Travius Hodges-Tomlinson, D. Winters being a few of those names, and there's others. And he mentioned that there were some guys that had eligibility left, like juniors that had eligibility left they thought would come back, that declared eligibility, or that declared their eligibility for the NFL draft and forgoed their last year of eligibility, I guess I should say. And so that created some huge roster turnover, and they thought more would carry over from the previous season where they had that great run. They made the national title game. And I think that's something that a lot of you have mentioned, not only in the offseason, but also during this past year. There didn't seem to be a lot of leadership on that team. There weren't guys that stepped up and said, hey, we got to draw a line in the sand here and get after it and turn things around. Chandler Morris goes down midseason, and so that also kind of played into it. Josh Hoover gets there. And I think Josh is – it seems like he's trying to be a vocal leader. I feel like the guys respond to him well. So hopefully that improves going into this next season. But they had a lot of guys that were playing significant roles that hadn't had a lot of college snaps. And he went on to say that this year in the transfer portal, and I've talked about this, but they really targeted players that have had impacts at previous college programs, no matter what level it was, whether it's Power 5, Group of 5, whatever the case. They were looking for players that have played a lot of snaps. He mentioned avoiding injury because that was something they dealt with last year. They had guys that had been productive at different schools, but the story of their career was, well, if player X could stay healthy, they could be a really big contributor. But those injury problems continued to plague them even when they got to TCU. So they made a concerted effort to go after guys that have played a lot of snaps, that understand what it means to be productive in college football and that are veterans. I do wonder, and I'll be curious to see what this 2025 class looks like as it starts to take shape. It felt like in 2024, they had a philosophy coming off all that momentum from the championship run. They were going to swing for the fences, go after big-name players. They missed out on some of those guys. Bryant Wesco being kind of the big name everybody knew. It looked like he might go to TCU, ends up committing to Clemson and stay with that commitment through the process. But they went after a lot of big-name players, and then once they struck out in some of those areas, suddenly a number of players that I think they typically would have targeted or would have been in the range for them to go target had already made commitments, and they kind of had to reshuffle, and they went after a lot of guys that have high ceilings. And so, again, they're kind of backfilling some of those immediate roster needs with guys in the transfer portal. And when he was talking about he expected more carryover from that great season where they went to the title game, everybody in college football is dealing with this, but I think this is going to be a unique challenge for TCU and schools like it. The transfer portal is a very real thing, and everybody is losing players, even your blue blood's the blue blood. Alabama's not a great example at the moment because they just underwent a coaching change, and so they had major turnover. But, yeah, Georgia loses players. They also keep a lot of their high school guys in-house and keep them for multiple seasons. Washington did a good job of retaining players. But bottom line is, can you really construct a team that's going to be consistently good if you're always having all this transition with the roster? because he went on to talk about losing close games and how, they were 5-7, but they had 4 one-score losses last year. And so if a few things break their way or bounce their way, then suddenly they're, that record's much different. Even if they could have just taken care of business against like Colorado and Texas Tech, you're talking about a team that's 7-5, and you can go beyond that with some of the close games that they've lost. I guess my question for him would be, I understand that, but you're changing up the offensive line, which is a big part of continuity year to year. And if you're turning over your roster each and every season, can you really expect that improvement, that leap that you would typically have, because you're depending on new faces? Even if it's guys with experience, you're still depending on new guys that are new to the program coming in and immediately being good. It's a tough thing, and I don't have a great answer for it. It's just, I think it's something to watch over the next few seasons, and maybe TCU's plan will shift a little bit, and they won't have to rely on the portal nearly as much in the coming seasons. But right now, it still seems like they're kind of in that in-between place where they're having to fill a lot of roster needs, with that. And that's a challenging thing, even if guys have experience, when you're talking about getting them on board and ready to play for a new program. He talked about the defense, Andy Avalos coming on as defensive coordinator. And he mentioned, he was pretty clear about this. And RJ Young kind of asked him a question that led him to this conclusion to a certain extent. But he said, are you excited about a more aggressive defense as opposed to the read and react 3-3-5 that you had been using for the past few seasons? And he acknowledged that they were. He felt like the team felt like the coaching staff felt like they had to get more aggressive on the defensive side of the football. And he also said that having more 4-down fronts, because technically they're calling it a 3-3-5, but you have the stud linebacker position that's more of an outside linebacker spot that's going to be in a stand-up place on the D-line. Having those 4-down line principles will hopefully attract more edge rushers, more talented pass rushers to the program. So they can go out there and recruiting, and they can sell, hey, we have somebody here who is good at creating good matchups for pass rushers to win, and who can put you in good situations to make plays. Because, I mean, the honest truth is, and this name is, I hesitate to even bring up this name because I don't think TCU ever had a chance. But Colin Simmons was a guy that his name was thrown around. I know he visited TCU a few times. Duncanville product, top edge rusher in the nation, one of the best players in the country. And people said, like, look, it'd be great to have him, but also, I mean, how can you expect a guy like that, who his whole career is going to be about getting to the passer, to thrive in this defense when we're talking about, and I'm talking about Joe Gillespie's defense, but how could he thrive in a defense where you're rushing 3 and you're frequently seeing double teams and you're just outnumbered, and those things are going to have a huge effect on what you can do? And it's a fair question. And so they're hopeful that, bringing in a new system, bringing in a more aggressive system is going to help them attract good pass rushers. And he also said help them play better complementary football, which is, I mean, it's an intriguing concept. I think the offense also has to hold up their end of the bargain, right, and just be more efficient and score more points. But if they feel like this is a good way to get back to a place where they're, playing complementary football, finding ways to win games, then it's the way to go. And I'm excited about what this defense is going to look like moving forward. Young also asked him about Haas Haney coming in and asked him if he thought he would have a chance to win the job and be the starting quarterback against Stanford, which is going to be a Friday night game. And he had said earlier in the interview, Sonny did, that one of the good things about transfers and bringing a lot of new players is that it promotes competition. And TCU wants to be a school that has competition at every position, every offseason, so people don't feel safe about their job. They have to win the job each and every year, right? And so he said Haas is going to have a shot. Now, I am still somewhat skeptical that we're going to have a real QB battle here. He also talked about Ken Seals coming in as someone who started 22 games in the SEC. and they feel good about this quarterback room. I think they feel like they have 3 QBs who, if they had to play, there's ways to win with all of them. Now, it might be your system might change a little bit. The plays you're going to run, the concepts you're going to kind of rely on might change given who it is. That is kind of one interesting thing about bringing in Seals is he's not a super mobile guy. He's more of a true pocket passer. And I guess to a certain extent, we don't really know how mobile Hoover is either because we didn't see him run the ball a lot because of the injury situation at QB when he was a starter. But they think they have 3 guys who can legitimately, help them win ball games. And that's a good deal. That's pretty rare in today's college football. Now, again, these are things that we're going to have to kind of confirm through actually seeing it happen on the field. But I think Josh Hoover is going to be your starting QB. Now, I do feel like there's a world where maybe Haas is on the field at times, whether that's in special packages or some different situations. And I think he could be a good asset for this team this year. But I don't think it's going to be as a starting quarterback. But they're going to have competition. They're going to, not promise jobs to people and let them fight it out and try to win it. And so, when the smoke clears, we'll get a good picture of who actually impressed and did the job well. And then he finally went on to kind of talk about the new look Big 12 and the parity in the league and how he thinks that's going to be a huge strength for the league moving forward. I think you can spin that different ways. I think the new Big 12 is going to be a lot of fun. I do feel like from a national perspective, they're fighting against a tough – the narrative's sort of already been established as it's below the SEC and the Big Ten, and they're fighting uphill trying to get that turned around. And I don't know if parity is going to be the best thing for that. I think it'll be fun for the league. I don't know if it'll be the best thing for, the future of the league and where they're at. Bottom line is you got to win. You got to win conference titles, and then whoever wins the conference title, hopefully it's TCU. You got to win playoff games, and that's how you're going to get respect and get back in a place where you're kind of sitting at the table with the 2 big conferences is just by winning games on big stages. But I'll link that interview here on YouTube. RJ Young and Sonny Dykes. It was good. It was intriguing. It was nice to hear from him as the offseason program kind of gets underway. When we come back, TCU basketball, they fall again to Iowa State. Huge game against West Virginia tonight. At home, 7 p.m. You don't want to go below 500 in this league, and this is probably the most winnable game left on the schedule. So we'll break that down next year on Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team every day. I've been telling you about FanDuel for a long time now, and you might say, Steven, you've been telling us about FanDuel. You've been telling us about these great deals for football, for the Super Bowl. It's been football. But FanDuel also lets you bet on hoops, specifically the NBA. And they always have a good deal going. They got another one right now. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. One $5 bet, you win that, you get $150 in bonus bets at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Again, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon. They have quick bets. They have same-game parlays. They have exclusive props for the NBA. You can bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams. $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. If your $5 bet wins, again, just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot today. They also have an app that is easy to download and use. FanDuel, official betting partner of the NBA and proud sponsor of the Locked On Network. All right, back here on Locked On Horned Frogs, TCU fell to Iowa State 71-59 in Ames, Iowa on Saturday. They are now 5-5 in conference play. Tough day shooting the basketball, only 29% from 3, 50% from the line, 44% overall. Emmanuel Miller led the way with 18 points, and Jacoby Coles was the only other Frog in double digits with 14. Everybody else just had a tough day at the office trying to score. Jameer Nelson Jr. continues to really struggle offensively. In 20 minutes, he was 3 of 9 from the field with 6 points. So Iowa State's really good. They are tied for first place in the Big 12 Conference. They have been essentially unbeatable in Ames this year. They beat Houston and Kansas at home earlier this season already. A really good basketball team. They're one of those teams that I thought early on in the season, okay, this is your typical Iowa State group, very physical, very good defensively. They'll cause trouble, but, they struggle to score. No, this is a better team. I mean, they got some legitimate guards who can go, and honestly, Lipsy, who's been their best player for the majority of the season, he missed the first game between TCU and Iowa State. Cyclone still found a way to win. He only had 7 points. He dealt with some foul trouble in the first half in this game on Saturday, and they still found a way to handle their business against the Frogs. But I did expect a better effort. They had a week to prepare. I mean, they had time. They had no midweek game to try to get in a good place, get a good game plan going. And again, some of the same issues plagued them. The biggest one is being Iowa State's really good defensively. Now, they did not turn the ball over nearly as much as they typically do. And I think at times they got good shots. They just weren't knocking it down. One thing is clear, and I think Texas – I don't know if Texas really wrote the blueprint for this because I feel like other teams were doing it. They just weren't able to do it as consistently as Texas and Iowa State have. But teams are going to blitz TCU in the pick and roll. They're going to blitz these guards in the pick and roll until they figure it out. Blitz meaning they're going to double team these guards out of the pick and roll, not really give them a path to move, and they're struggling to find guys rolling to the rim. You can't dribble sideways. You can't back up and dribble backwards. Like, you have to either get north and south and try to split the double team or find a way to change your line of vision and make a pass. But again, guards just struggled in those situations. And Iowa State's really good defensively. I mean, it doesn't take long to watch them play to see they're long, they're athletic, they rotate really well, they take care of one another, they communicate. They get it done on that side of the ball. But only 59 points. Again, really rough shooting day from three. Now, Jacoby Coles has been better lately, and he continues to kind of get things done. Not really getting much from their big men. Ernest Uday had 3 points. Xavier Cork only had 4. Just not much of an offensive threat from either of those guys. Frogs did win the rebound battle. I mean, they didn't get killed in turnovers or rebounds. It was really just wasting possessions and then not – like when they did get good shots, not knocking them down. And defensively, this team continues to just go through some lapses where they'll go through 4 or 5 minute stretches where they just can't get stops. They cut that lead down to 9 at one point. I think they had it down to 7 early in the second half, like 48-41. They made a really good run in the first half and cut the lead to 4. And at one point, one big turning point in the game to me, Xavier Cork had a couple free throws. They're down 4. He gets a rebound, goes back up, gets fouled. If he hits 2 free throws, it's a 2-point game. If he hits 1, it's a 1-possession game. Well, he misses both. Iowa State comes down, hits a 3. Now you're down 7. Another bad possession by the Frogs. Another wide open 3. Now you're down 10. And suddenly going into halftime, they were down 8 when, it could have been a 2-point game, maybe a tied ball game if you in that half on a good run, but just didn't play well in critical stretches. So they get West Virginia tonight. West Virginia is having a rough season so far. Obviously they had the Bob Huggins firing. It's been a tough year for them. They're 8-15. It's a home game. It's a 7 p.m. tip. You got to find a way to win this ball game. They have gone from, looking really good, maybe could end up 6-3 in conference play if they could have found a way to beat Texas. So now you're back to 500. You get West Virginia today at home. Then you go on the road to take on Kansas State and on the road to take on Texas Tech. That's your next 3. So some tough games coming up. They're always tough in the Big 12. Tonight's a pretty critical night, though, I feel like. Got to find a way to get a victory against the Mountaineers. That's going to be a huge key. Again, that's a 7 p.m. tip, Shalimar Arena, ESPN Plus telecast. So hopefully they can find a way to get going. Want to see Jameer Nelson Jr. get back on track. Want to see these guards play better against a West Virginia team that's going to pressure you and try to make things difficult. But pretty significant game for Jamie Dixon's squad as they get ready for a quick turnaround, traveling from Iowa State on Saturday back home to take on West Virginia on Monday. But the good thing about that is I think from a mentality standpoint, maybe it's beneficial on, hey, not a lot of time to dwell on a tough loss. You just got to get right back at it and play again. And so hopefully that's a good thing for a bounce-back situation for this TCU team. When we come back, a little baseball talk in segment 3. We'll also get some audience reaction from Thursday's show. Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. I do want to mention LinkedIn, linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. That's where you need to go. If you are a small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals faster, and they'll do it for free. LinkedIn is not just another job board. It has a vast network of over 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates, so easy that 86% of small businesses have quality candidates in 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. They're constantly finding ways to make the process easier. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Again, that's linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege to post your job for free. As always, terms and conditions do apply. So I was tuning into, I didn't listen to the full interview. I'm hoping to do that later today. But the Lepton Drinking Club, good podcast. Ray Cartwright, Jacob Sailors, Uninformed Frog, Martin, Yellen K. I'm using some social media names there, and I'm sorry for that, but I'm kind of blanking on everybody's name at the moment. They had Kirk Sarloos on, and they do a great job covering TC baseball and all sports. And they had Kirk on to talk about, hey, it's game week. Team opens the season Friday against Florida Gulf Coast. And Kirk has gone ahead and dropped the weekend rotation. So your Friday night starter is going to be Peyton Tolle, the two-way star from Wichita State, who's bringing a lot of power to the lineup and is also, your starting pitcher. On Friday night, Cole Klecker on Saturday, who was a starter last year. Didn't start the season that way, but by the end of the year definitely was. And then Zach Morris, the transfer from Arkansas, who has been in the bullpen role the last few years for the Hogs and struggled last season, but apparently had a really good fall camp. Now, when I first listened to this, my first immediate reaction was, wow, Peyton Tolle on Friday nights, because typically Friday night you throw your best starter, and Cole Klecker is their best starter. Now, Kirk went on to explain that he likes the idea of having your best arm on Saturdays, because you can win a series on Saturdays. You can get a game back if you dropped a game and force a rubber game if you find a way to win Saturdays. And so he just likes the way that goes. He also likes the idea of a lefty, a righty, a lefty, in that 3-day structure. But then the second time I listened to it, I was like, oh, wow. I think the more interesting thing here is actually you have Zach Morris starting as opposed to Ben Hampton, the West Virginia transfer, who has started over 4 years for the Mountaineers. I thought he'd be your Sunday starter. It's going to be Zach Morris instead, which, I think that's a positive thing, and it would allow you to use Ben Hampton on Tuesdays, which is pretty crazy. Like, typically, at least the last few years, Tuesday night for the Frogs has been what young guy, what freshman or sophomore are we trying to get some innings, get some experience, get some things, working for him. And it also now allows you to, like, Luis Rodriguez is still out there. Could he throw in the bullpen? And all this is subject to change, right? Like, the season's going to start, and we're going to see how these guys do. And there's, in a lot of cases, these things kind of get shuffled around. But I feel like you're going into the season, and you legitimately have 4 starters that you feel pretty good about. And that's huge in a tournament situation. If you find yourself in the loser's bracket for some reason or in an elimination game, you don't want to throw your main arm. If you have some other guys that you trust, that's really beneficial. Yeah, I'm excited about baseball season. We have Jacob Sailors on tomorrow's show, and he'll break down this team, give a better look at what they're looking at going into the season. But, I'm going to listen to that full interview with Kirk Sarloos, and I'll have more on it on tomorrow's show. I talked on Thursday about the huge news that Gary Patterson is going to Baylor, the surprising news he's going to Baylor. A lot of you had a reaction. Jim Norris said, oh, my gosh, anyone but them. Yeah, I feel you, brother. It's just so strange. I get that it's the business of college football. It is what it is, but it's still so weird. Landman Texas said, great hire for Baylor, but why would GP take that gig? It's almost like he wants to destroy his legendary status in Fort Worth. I also think it's a good hire for Baylor. I think what they're asking him to do, scouting, is what he excels at. As far as his motivation, I can't totally speak to that. I think, this was probably the best offer on the table for him. He wants to be a head coach again. He's expressed that desire. It doesn't seem like that was really in the cards. Some people have said, is he kind of angling for maybe a chance to coach the Baylor team if Dave Aranda has a rough start to the season and gets let go? I'm not sure if it's that as much as it is just kind of staying in the conversation and communicating to people like, hey, this is where I want to be. I want to be a part of this. And if opportunities arise, like I want folks to know that I'm still in the game. Avery Lane says definitely time to remove the statue. I've seen that thrown around. I don't think it's going to happen, but I understand people's frustration and anger. Somebody said all the head coaching jobs he could have taken, he wants to be an assistant at Baylor. That's weird. Honestly, man, unless you know something I don't know, I don't think there were head coaching jobs on the table for him. I mean, it sounds like there weren't. So this is kind of regrouping and trying again, maybe after a season at Baylor, he'll have better opportunities. We'll see. We'll be back tomorrow. It's the Locked On Horned Frogs. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. It's your team, and we do it here every day.